According to Consumer Affairs, Gen Z's purchasing power is now 86% lower than baby boomers at the same age. Let that sit for a second. We're spending twice as much on housing and over 300% more on public tuition. And yet, headlines still call us the wasted generation. So the question becomes, how did the richest generation in American history leave behind a nation drowning in debt? This isn't about judgment. This isn't about blame. This is about understanding. Because understanding the past is the only way we actually change the future. And that future? It starts right after World War II, when America emerged as something the world had never seen before. The U.S. economy nearly doubled between 1939 and 1945. We produced half the world's industrial output. Wages went up 60%. While Europe and Japan were literally rebuilding from rubble, America was thriving. And millions of soldiers came home to a nation that was primed for them. Expanding industries, rising wages, government programs that made home ownership accessible. For the first time in American history, the middle class wasn't a luxury, it was the default. Between 1946 and 1964, 76 million babies were born in America. That's nearly 40% of the nation's population. And these weren't kids expected to work the fields or the factories. These were kids raised in a fundamentally new way. Their parents had survived the Depression and the war. They weren't going to let their children suffer like they did. So the suburbs were built. Rows of identical houses, uniform driveways, neatly trimmed lawns. And the message was simple. As long as you fit in, as long as you followed the system, stability was guaranteed. Success was inevitable. All you had to do was conform. Then came Dr. Benjamin Spock's book on child rearing. It sold 500,000 copies in 6 months, and his philosophy was revolutionary for the time. Emotional well-being over discipline, protection over hardship, personal happiness over resilience. Kids should be shielded from struggle. And so, for the first time, childhood became about comfort instead of survival. By 1954, a New York Times article warned about the overprivileged child. Psychologists worried these kids would grow up fragile, unable to handle real life. They were more right than they realized. But here's where it gets interesting. Corporate America saw an opportunity. They looked at an entire generation raised to expect comfort and consumption, and they weaponized it. Television became the center of every American home, and with it came something new. Advertising designed specifically to manipulate children, not just sell them products, manipulate their desires. A man named Ernest Dichter, they called him the Freud of Madison Avenue, figured out how to do it. He set up what he called his living laboratory in his New York mansion. Children would watch television while psychologists crouched behind screens, studying their reactions, learning how to crack open their unconscious minds. And the message was clear. Fulfillment isn't found in purpose or community. It's found in buying things, in the endless pursuit of material goods. A baby boomer parent put it this way. In the 50s, you worked hard and things got better. You got promoted, you got more money, you could buy furniture, have more children, buy better clothes. Life just improved. But their kids didn't see the work. They just saw the improvement. They took it for granted that life would automatically get better. And when you build an entire generation on that assumption, everything changes. At the same time, something darker was creeping in. The Cold War. Unlike their parents who faced real, visible threats, baby boomers grew up with an abstract one. Nuclear annihilation. The constant possibility that civilization could end at any moment. According to Harvard's Department of Psychology, this fostered what they called a sense of having no future, an anxiety so deep it influenced decisions about marriage, kids, everything. Then came 1957. Sputnik launched, and suddenly, America panicked. We're falling behind in science. We're losing the space race. The response was swift. Restructure education entirely. Stop teaching practical skills. Start teaching everything as if the nation's survival depends on it, because maybe it did. And with that shift came a new truth. A college degree became the only path to success, the only way to save America, the only way to save yourself. By the time baby boomers entered the workforce, they expected things. They expected stability. They expected raises. They expected that if you worked hard, life would improve, just like their parents' lives had improved. But employers saw something different. They saw an entitled generation. Kids who wanted freedom. Kids who wanted happiness. Kids who refused to play by the old rules. and that terrified them. A 1970 Time magazine article described young workers as feisty, insolent, and unwilling to put up with things as they are. Union members were rejecting contracts, demanding more. In San Francisco, iron workers got a 30% raise in 1 year, a $21 per hour increase, which would be about $177 today. And yet, even that wasn't enough. The younger generation kept pushing, and in pushing, they gave employers the perfect excuse to turn on them. But there's a part of the baby boom generation nobody talks about, Generation Jones. They came of age just as the economic structure started cracking. The Bretton Woods system collapsed in 1971, the oil embargo hit in 1973, mass layoffs, stagnating wages, job security disappeared overnight, and these kids, who were told their whole lives that the system would reward them, watched it fail. They watched their older siblings get what they were promised, and they got nothing. On top of that came Watergate. Millions of young Americans watched their government lie. They watched a president they only knew as Tricky Dicks resign in disgrace. And they watched the revolutionaries, the counterculture heroes who were supposed to change everything, just integrate into the system, become the establishment, step over the homeless to buy Rolexes. That generation didn't just lose faith in government, they lost faith in everything. So when Ronald Reagan came along saying government is not the solution to our problem, government is the problem, they listened. He offered something different. No government solutions, just free markets, lower taxes, deregulation. And he made it sound so simple. Your success is your responsibility. Not the systems, not governments, yours, individually, alone. But let me show you something real. Let me show you 2 conversations I had that matter more than any statistic. The first one started with a comment on one of my videos. Someone angry. Someone who said I was making excuses. Snowflakes, they called my generation. Just get a job. Do your part. That's called life. And my first instinct was to get defensive, to argue, to match their anger with anger. But I made a different choice. I decided to understand instead. I asked, why did you feel the need to say that? And what came back was something real. I'm sorry, they wrote. I felt sieged, hated by everyone. I wake up too early every morning trying to find motivation to go to work. I've worked hard for 50 years. I'm so tired, but I can't afford to retire. And something shifted in that moment. This wasn't about blame anymore. It was about 2 people recognizing they're stuck in the same system. They watched my video, and what they said next was the point. You are right on the money. I have 2 sons, 21 and 20. I've worked with young guys. I know what you're up against, and it's just getting worse. I've told my own generation what they're doing to ruin things for everyone who comes next. It's the corporations. When I got out of the Navy in 1984, I could follow a lumber truck to a job site and have work. Those times were simple. I'm sorry for you guys. If I could change it, I would. That takes something. That takes bravery to admit. And here's what matters. We're talking about the same things. A baby boomer who worked 50 years and can't retire. A Gen Z kid trying to afford tuition. We're both trapped. But we've been conditioned to blame each other instead of the system. And that's intentional. Emotion is a magnet that corporations and agendas and narratives love to fuel. As long as we're fighting each other, we're not looking at what's really happening. Because the numbers don't lie. In 1989, tuition at a state university was $4,275. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $11,000 in today's dollars. A student earning minimum wage $3.30 an hour could cover a full year with 1,276 hours of work. Today, average tuition is $27,467. At $7.25 minimum wage, that's 3,744 hours. Nearly triple. And if we raised minimum wage to $15, it's still 1,810 hours. A debt-free degree is nearly impossible, and even if you graduate, you're making $68,000 while your degree costs 6 figures. Half of you are working jobs completely unrelated to your major. We're $36 trillion in national debt, $130 trillion in credit card debt, $170 trillion in student loans. 62% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And if current trends continue, after taxes and healthcare, the average family's income is projected to drop by 37% by 2030. We've mortgaged the future for the convenience of the present, and nobody's talking about how to fix it. So here's the thing. Baby boomers didn't create this system to be evil. They inherited a moment, an economic miracle, and they were told to enjoy it. They were raised to consume, to expect comfort, to believe the system would always reward hard work. That's not entitlement, that's just what they were taught. But somewhere along the way, the system changed, and instead of acknowledging that, we decided to blame each other. We're part of a circus, and we don't realize we're the main attraction. Every generation. We have to start having real conversations, not angry ones. Conversations where we actually listen. Where a 50-year-old who's exhausted can admit the system is broken. Where a 22-year-old can explain why they can't afford what their parents could. Where we stop pretending one generation is lazy or one is cruel and start asking, what policies created this? Because logic and understanding are the only things that get us out of this. Emotion is what keeps us trapped. And as long as we're emotionally divided, nothing changes. We need to understand Reagan's tax policies, why stock buybacks replaced job creation, why media deregulation fractured our common reality, why unions collapsed, why education became unaffordable. These aren't opinions, these are facts, and facts can be changed. So if this video provided value, like and subscribe. Not because I need the views, but because understanding spreads, because change starts when enough people understand what actually happened. This isn't about finger pointing, it's about seeing clearly, and seeing clearly is the first step to doing something different. Until next time,